Welcome back to another episode of Tinatastic Talks. I am here with a very special guest.
Aww.
Her name is Vahen King. She is Miss Wheelchair Canada 2017. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And we met just by contact and friends of friends of friends, and got to know each other through Facebook, and now we're here.
Yes. So excited. Yay.
Exactly.
In Quebec.
I know. You're originally from Newfoundland.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So, what I thought would be cool and interesting, because I haven't done this on my channel yet, what I'd like to showcase today is the difference between an invisible disability and a visible disability, and to see if there are commonalities and similarities, and also what are the differences between the two. So, that's kind of the preface of the whole thing. So, talk to me about how everything started before you ended up having to be in a wheelchair.
Well, first of all, the virus that I contracted is called Transverse Myelitis. It's a neurological disease, a virus that attacks the myelin sheath of the spinal cord. So the events that were happening around that time was I just gotten engaged. Within a week after engagement, I was rushed to the hospital. I have a lot of pain, and then within a week, they diagnosed me with transverse myelitis. But within 12 hours, I went from fully functional to paralyzed in a less than 12-hour period.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's pretty heavy.
Yes, we like to joke and say that my husband, he literally swept me off my feet when he proposed. So that's just what we say. We like to say that.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to get through it. So, I mean, yeah, no, that's good. So, you were experiencing some symptoms prior to this whole event?
Well,
or kind of like progressing in weird ways?
I mean, the doctors didn't think that was a thing at the time. Like maybe a couple of years before I was actually paralyzed. I had a bursitis in my right hip, and I would sit down and I would try to go to stand, and I'd literally be paralyzed. Like I wouldn't be able to stand. And my left side was just in pain, and I wasn't often able to stand and walk across the kitchen. It would be so much painful. And then I took some anti-inflammatories and that thing. And then maybe within that year or so after, I started experiencing some numbness in my right hand.
Okay.
I remember one day peeling the potatoes, and your hand goes numb, and I'm like trying to wake it up, and the whole day it didn't wake up. And so go to the doctor, and then it's like, you're too young to have anything really happen.
Because how old were you at the time?
I was 23 around at that time. Actually, I was younger than 23. It's probably 22, 23, because I got engaged at 23, married at 24. But in that process of the left hip thing and the right hand thing, then when I got paralyzed that day, now the symptoms, my left hip is the weakest, and my right hand has not fully come back. So it's interesting that those two symptoms were prior, but they said that there was nothing. Oh, you're too young to have anything really happening, but maybe my body was already starting to tell me something was happening, but I didn't know at the time. And
well, I mean, I think it's difficult for many of us who experience things that are not the norm.
Yes.
To then, it's like, what do we do with these weird symptoms that are happening? How do we process it? Do we go see a healthcare professional? So, with transverse myelitis, it's the fact that it attacks the myelin sheath with the spinal cord. Are there any other symptoms that occur for you other than that? Along with in the hand and
there's it's neurological. So all of your intestines and your digestion system, and your organs don't work properly. Like your bladder and bowel, they don't function the same way as they used to, because they just totally shut down, right? And so early on, I had to get somebody else to do those things for me. So I wasn't able to do any of that. So my bathroom routine looks a little differently.
Looks a little different than the average person, basically. And that's because basically the brain is not able to send signals, right? To that part of your body. With all the emotions, obviously, that's brought on to you and your fiance, and then your husband, obviously, and your family. Like, how did you process all that? And
that's really good, because I think I've always been a strong person. And so I was trying to be strong, right? And I thought I was being strong. but I didn't like being a victim. I didn't like being perceived as a victim, but I kind of felt like a victim because I needed someone to do things for me all the time, and I didn't really feel confident in myself. I didn't feel pretty. Yeah, I just didn't feel the same as I was before, and I kind of equate it as I felt less than, not like less than I was before because I couldn't do what I could before, and so you have this whole new world that you're now in. I'm now a person with a disability. What does that even look like, right? And how do you now navigate the, I'm not going to be able to drive right away, and I didn't want to drive right away. I wanted to do everything the way I did it before, and so it was keeping me stuck because I was only focusing on, I'm not going to do anything until I can do it the way I did it before.
That's a lot of pressure on yourself, right?
And so I didn't really handle the emotions very well. Early on, I was like, we're going to get through this. This is just a weekend thing. I'm going to be back on my feet in no time. But when that didn't happen, then the emotions, and it was a struggle. For my family, seeing me struggle was hard because because I went from being totally paralyzed and then so retraining myself to even sit up on my own or to reach for a cup, right? Like I was like, oh, this is exciting. I can do this.
Yeah.
But yet it was hard for my family to see me, even though I was excited about it, they still see me as I'm still struggling. And it was hard. Like it was just a lot of emotion and I didn't handle it well for a long time. And so, but I had to come to a point where I'm like, you know what? I need to make some changes or else I'm just not going to make it because I was just consuming myself with all the things that I couldn't do.
So what type of changes did you have to make then? Or how did you adjust, basically?
Well, first of all, I look for ways to be more independent.
Okay.
Right? Like that. Once I started like realizing that I could actually drive, that like the freedom and the independence that I gain, and I get more self-confidence. Starting to see myself as valued, and even though I'm in a wheelchair, I'm still pretty. Right?
Well, duh.
But I didn't see that at the time.
Yeah.
And like I just thought, because no one's going to want this. No one's going to want me as a person with a disability. But my husband, that he did stay with me. But it's interesting that someone else can accept you. But if you don't accept yourself, right, then that was a whole process for me. But I believe my faith was one thing that really helped bring me through. Yeah. But a lot of it was just choosing. I don't want to play a victim anymore. I don't want to be that person, because you can be able-bodied. You don't have to have a physical disability to be perceived as a victim, because you can be unhappy and still have your health. Yeah,
adjusting and I think focusing on your self-worth and building that back up, gaining that confidence back. Your own self-perception has to change. Yeah. So in terms of like adjusting, now it's been 20 years, you said before. Yeah, 20 years that this has been a reality for you. Life back then, and as you were starting to adjust over the years versus now, having lived with this for 20 years, what do things look like now versus before?
It's interesting how an outsider looking in, things don't really look differently now. But for me, and the way I've embraced it, I think it's interesting that you say that, because sometimes I feel that I have an unfair advantage in life. I see, because some people look at someone with a disability and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, no, don't feel sorry for me, because sometimes I feel that, able-bodied people, do you get praised for doing your own groceries?
No.
I do, all the time. Or, wow, you drive? Like, I've been rock climbing and zip lining, and I've done all those things, and I'm an author, and I travel and I speak, but I get more of an oh, wow reaction when I tell people that I drive or do my own groceries. So I think that's an unfair advantage. I get accolades for doing things that you guys do regularly. But anyway, I've just looked at what I've been given as an opportunity to have a voice that I've really always wanted to have. So
yeah, it's interesting how these type of, you might want some sort of a platform. You don't know how it's going to happen, and then you're basically given a platform not because it's what you wanted, but it's because of just what's happened in life, result, and just like, how are you going to choose to embrace what's happened?
Yeah. I heard a phrase someone actually on a movie this past month, and it said, "This chair can either be your prison or your wings. You decide."
Wow.
Whatever it is you're struggling with, it could be like depression, it could be whatever. It could be insecurity. Whatever that is, you could let it be your prison, or you can turn it into something that's going to empower you to help your own self to empower others.
Yeah, which I think is really beautiful. And what I encourage like everyone, as if you've seen some of my videos, like I always try to come back to like, once you've dealt with kind of like the grieving process and accepting, you have to move on towards something else, right?
Yeah, you have to move
to
on.
keep yourself just sane, basically, in that you don't just fall into total despair, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with it? So I think it's very powerful, just your outlook and how you've chosen to embrace what's happened, and you've been able to travel the world because of it, which is like pretty amazing.
Thank
like
you.
I think it's wow.
One of the things that I also like to say is that I've looked for ways in my everyday life to make the extraordinary be ordinary. And like we live our lives, and we always look for that extraordinary thing that seems so unattainable. But when I started, for example, the doctors told me I would never walk again, and that I'm never going to be independent or whatever. But then I stopped listening to the bad reports, right? And so, but the thought of standing was extraordinary. I'm like, wow, I'm not going to be ever to stand. But when I stood for the first time, right, that was extraordinary. I was like, oh my goodness, if I can do this, something the doctor said I'd never do, what else can I do? So and then when I started walking with my walker, and I made my unassisted steps, like unassisted, just like without any walker, that standing became so ordinary. And so like looking for ways and opportunities in our lives to face that thing that you're told that it's impossible, but not letting those limitations define your outlook on life, and looking for ways to make just extraordinary things become ordinary in your life. And that's how you can choose to overcome that way.
So that kind of feeds into the last question, which is, what would you say to someone who is struggling with either something that's a visible disability or invisible, or just dealing with life, what life throws at you? How would you encourage them?
Wow, I mean, there's so many different layers to that, and there's not like one answer that will like be good for everyone.
Yeah.
But one thing for sure is that never walk this journey alone. Never walk it alone. And make sure you have a good support. And I think another thing that I like to tell people is that you need to have the right environment for success. Because if you are constantly around people like that are bringing you down or don't have the right environment for success, that I found for myself that I'm not able to continue. If you have the right people around you, then you have that encouragement and support that sometimes they give you things that you don't have the strength in your own self. Positive people around you is very key, but being open and sharing and being real with where you're at, because it's not fun when you're going right through it. And until you really be real, if you're upset, you're angry, don't just pretend that things are fine when they're not. But be vulnerable to the right people, and not allow, because you need to trust people that you're opening up to. And that was another thing too, right? That you need to have good support, but you need to know who to trust and let close to you. Yeah. You had mentioned when we first started about, I have a visible disability, and you have a disability.
Like it's kind of is visible but invisible at the same time, because I do have like, look, what my face wants to do is this right now, but I have to try to control it so that it doesn't do that. Yeah. But at the same time, if someone all of a sudden runs past this window, I'm gonna react and I'm gonna get super scared. Right? So it's a weird mix for me, but what were you going to say?
I was going to say, because you see, people see my disability, and they think that that's something that holds me back or that I struggle with, right? And so they think that is it. And I think for a long time in my process of healing, people would be more concerned with my physical state and not understand that I was like dying on the inside, needing emotional support. Yeah. And just even like just being a newlywed early on, like, they see the chair and they don't ask me when I'm going to be having babies, right? Like you get a free pass, like, like everybody, as soon as they're married, what are they saying? Like, oh, when are you going to have a baby? When are you going to have a baby? I never got that. It's like, oh, because that's okay. Almost like you never got that. You never got that. And that's fine. But it's like one of those things, right? Like they think they see a physical disability and they assume they know what it is that you struggle with. Yeah. But this chair was not ever my biggest struggle. It was what was going on up here.
So in essence, dealing with your mental and emotional state is key to
Yeah.
just being able to move on and
Absolutely.
and chart a course for your
Yep.
life basically after things that happen.
Yep.
So I think that's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's
sharing
great for
with
being
me.
here. Yes.
Yeah, I will leave Vien's
Contact
information, website, channel down in the description, and you can find her on social media, on Facebook and stuff like
Yes.
that. Okay, I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.